Hi, Jocelyn. Thank you for taking time for this interview. I know that about 3 weeks ago or 4 weeks ago, I contacted you over Facebook with, I call it a discovery or something I noticed with regards to cancer treatment. And I asked you if I'm out of my mind or if it's something that makes sense. And based on that, we already had a one call, we discussed it. And now I would like to do a more formal interview that I would like to publish. And I guess the first question would be if you can tell me more, or if you can tell us, the viewers, more about your background with regards to, let's say, cancer.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for inviting me, George. Just for your viewers' information, you did find me on Facebook. I started this Facebook page called Keto for Cancer, I think probably 6 months ago, to help patients understand a little more about the keto diet, ketogenic diet and cancer. But in real life, I'm actually a practicing medical oncologist in the United States, and I work at Veteran Affairs, and I'm an associate professor at the University School of Medicine. So I do mostly clinical work, but I also do research on ketogenic diets in cancer patients. In fact, we did a trial not too long ago. In my spare time, when I have spare time, I do the blogging. I do have a Facebook page online, and I also do virtual consults to non-veterans, to civilians on secondopinions.com, and also I'm a consultant for Care Oncology. So that's my short background, and here I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Okay, so before I ask the questions, I want to make sure that after the interview, please send me all the links that you would like to publish as part of this interview, where people can, for example, find you or how they can contact you or whatever you feel comfortable with. Yeah. Now,
Sure.
So the first question I had with regards to what I noticed was that and I'm 43 years old, and unfortunately I never had this information. But the first question is it true that the human cell is mostly nowadays powered by glucoses?
You mean a normal human cell?
Yes.
Normal human cells do consume glucose. They also consume proteins and fats. So, to a varying degree,
Okay.
They do prefer glucose first. I'd probably say it's something like being faced with a buffet, and you have the glucose, the carbohydrates, which is dry leaves, and you have protein, which is more solid, so that does not burn fast. And lastly, you have fats, which burn longer. So they're all sources of energy.
Okay.
At one extreme is glucose, and the other extreme is fat.
Okay, perfect. So then, when I was searching on the internet, I learned that so the healthy cell consumes the energy, and mainly what it does is that it has a function in the body to do something. Then it's got the algorithm that once it's reached, the cell will actually go into the dying mode so that it can be replaced by a new cell. And that's the healthy cell. And then on the other side, we have the cancer cell. And is it true that the cancer cell consumes glucoses mainly?
Okay. Normal cells usually get older, and in the process of their lifetime, they maintain themselves by getting rid of damaged molecules. And then at the end of their life, they die, right? That's the normal process, like buying a car. You touch up, you maintain, eventually you get rid of the car, and that's normal. Cancer cells seem to do that a different way. They become cancer cells because they have some kind of defect. So either a defect in the nucleus or defect in the mitochondria. So they're not quite the same. One thing about cancer cells is they forget to die, so they keep going. And now you have functioning, but pretty much dysfunctional machine.
Mm-hmm.
It's there, but it's not doing the right thing. It's growing in different directions, going where it's not supposed to be. And yeah, that's pretty much what happens to a cell that loses its controls. And
Okay. Now, is it true that the cancer cell, consumes the glucoses, and then it uses this mainly to grow, and maybe and also that the cancer cell is a master in getting glucoses? Is that true?
yeah, someone told me this 10 years ago, and I thought that was not right because, most doctors would say you need sugar to get better when you have cancer, right?
Mm-hmm.
So turns out that the cancer cells, when they develop, they start growing, and they start multiplying and crowding each other out. One thing unique to cancer cells is they do consume more sugar, even though that is a more primitive way of energy. It's probably almost 20 times less efficient.
Mm-hmm.
But they're not able to get energy the normal way,
Mm-hmm.
because they're primitive. They developed and came to this world, and all of a sudden they're in a foreign body where they need to survive right away, and pretty much it needs to take whatever it can. So
Mm-hmm.
sugar is there, it can break down easily, they'll take that, and because their energy needs get more and more,
Mm-hmm.
and they cannot use the more sophisticated energy producing mechanism, they have to depend on this. So what do? They gotta work faster, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's keep breaking down more sugar. It has really no choice. So that's why cancers do prefer sugar, simply because of the pathway that they follow.
Now, I also read that one of the reasons it's really hard to find a cure for cancer is that, all the cures, they usually try to block off the energy or the glucoses that the cancer cells could get. And always when when someone manages to like close off one pathway, the cancer cell, figures out another way and another pathway to another source of glucoses. Is this true?
I see. Guess the reason why cancers don't die right away is, you're right, there is more than one way to develop a cancer. So cancer, when it develops, starts making its own blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
So we do have drugs to try to target that, right? Turn off the blood vessels.
Mm-hmm.
So how come they respond, but then they grow back? Well, because they also learned to not die. So now you need another drug to fix that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, still not working. So what's wrong? Because they also depend on this tumor signaling pathway. And more cases, most cases, they have more than one pathway.
Mm-hmm.
So you're right. Just because you target one signal, you might see a response initially, and later on they grow back because there's something called crosstalk. The tumor signals intersect with each other, and the cancer cells find another way out.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they're manipulative, basically.
Wow. So this is exactly what you're saying. Is that's what I found on the internet, and then I also found out that there exists a source of energy that the healthy human cell actually prefers, but the cancer cell cannot consume it. And I have learned that this source of energy is called ketone. Is that correct? That this is something that the human cell, the healthy one, can consume, but the cancer cell cannot?
I guess partly true. Cancer cells can consume pretty much everything, but they prefer glucose.
Mm-hmm.
So if ketones happen to be in the picture, the normal cells will take advantage of that better.
Mm-hmm.
And guess the cancer cells will see it, but they will have a very hard time using that because they don't have machinery.
Mm-hmm.
See, so even if it's there, and I know that came into question when someone gave me a paper and said, well, this paper said that when we add ketones to a dish, with cancer cells, it fed them. That's true, but in the dish, it's just the cancer cells and the ketones. You don't have any other interfering factors. So when you bring that to an animal or in humans, it's going to be different. So they prefer glucose over ketones, and normal cells can pretty much metabolize everything.
So when you say this, so how would you describe the benefits that if, let's say, I have cancer cells in my body and I turn into keto diet, how can it help me with cancer?
When you stop eating sugar or cut down on carbs, right, your body starts finding a way to make substitute energy. So it breaks down the fats, it changes it into ketones. So ketones is the substitute form of energy, right? So that will not only be substitute energy, it's also anti-inflammatory. During that process, the body goes into recycling mode. The damaged parts of cells become, they get removed, and the body prepares itself to make new ones. So a keto diet is similar to fasting. It weakens pretty much all the cells, but the cancer cells get weakened even more because they are already defective to begin with, you see? So the net effect would be that the normal cells will become stronger because now the body goes into this repair mechanism and it's trying to protect itself now. So there's actually a paper where they gave chemotherapy plus subjected the patients to conditions similar to fasting together. Okay, so they fasted them, they gave chemo, the normal cells got better, the markers of inflammation decreased, and the net effect was that the patient's cancer stayed in longer response. It took a while before the cancers came back compared to those who were not. So it would bring down inflammation. It would technically make your response to the cancer treatment better if you combine it. And of course, there's the portion where after fasting, you have to eat, right? You have to eat at some point. So by that time, your normal cells are still okay, but your cancer cells are still weak. So if you hit that portion of the refeeding with food that the cancers cannot make anyway, so what's happened? You're going to have a good effect. Your normal cells will get even stronger. Your cancer cells will pretty much die because you're beat it up and you're getting that eat. So it's a win-win situation. You're healthy.
Okay, now.
You keep it diet. And what's keto diet for you fast? If we weaken the cancer cells, food is not good for you.
Now, Jocelyn, you were dropping out a little bit right now. So the last 3 sentences, I think, were not heard. But I understood that, so that when you starve, when you come back, you should eat foods that are more keto diet so that the cancer cells don't get the sugar that they are after, right? Did I understand correctly?
Yeah, maybe I can add this angle because you see, there's the keto diet, right? And then there's another group studying something totally different. It's fasting. It's fasting, right? So they both bring you into ketosis. So the keto diet is supposed to be a substitute for fasting because some people cannot fast. So you give the keto diet as a way of fasting but eating.
Yeah.
So So that's the main idea. When you fast or go on the keto diet, you weaken your cancer cells and you strengthen your normal cells.
Okay.
So when you add regular chemotherapy to that, you double the effect.
Now, this brings me to, I would say, the main motivator why I approached you and that was, I did the water fast, right? I did one which was 50 days, and the other one was 41 days. And when I hear from you that the keto diet can actually help me, then I always remember holding on, the paper slip that I put my urine on, and it told me that I have 0% glucoses, and that I have that the ketones in my body just skyrocketed. So then my question was that I feel that this, if I can stay in this state for 20, 30 days where I'm just drinking water, the body is getting energy from the fat that it has. I felt that this should almost destroy the cancer cells, no?
Yeah, that is a reasonable assumption, because you are giving energy to your normal cells. Nothing has been taken away. In fact, it's a more efficient form of fuel, Once your body becomes ketone adapted, the energy is taken up more easily. Meanwhile, you're not giving any energy to the cancers. Well, probably you still are, but very minimal, at that point. They're probably just taking scraps from the ketone stockpile and barely getting by. So if the cancer burden, that I guess that's key. Some people have cancer, but they have what we call tumor burden. Some people have just a little amount, so it takes shorter time to respond. And some people come with bigger tumors or tumors that are really metabolically active. So it's going to be harder to treat them because there's a lot, We do measure that either by measuring the size of the tumor or check the blood, and you can see how much inflammation there is. So it's all in context. You need to know who your enemy is. If you have a lot of tumor, you're going to need more time.
Yeah.
You're going to need to fast probably longer time, but you also have to keep in mind when you have cancer, a lot of these patients are weak to begin with. They have lost weight. And most doctors would hesitate to fast them or even put them on a keto diet. The word diet already sounds really bad unless they think diet means adding calories. So that's the traditional thought. But I think with time, maybe in the next 10, 20 years, the tide will change and doctors will start thinking more in the metabolic way. Already a lot of the traditional oncologists are very interested in metabolically related therapies, drug therapies. So I think it's just a matter of time that they will incorporate diet.
Wow. Now, this brings me to another question, which was, how long can a human cell, regardless if it's healthy or unhealthy, how long can it survive when it has no glucoses and no ketones? And the reason I'm asking is that, when I was checking the internet and I wanted to know how long the human cell, how long is the lifespan of a human cell, I found out there are cells who last the whole life, like the cells in the eye. There are cells that last only a day, like the cells in the intestines. And that the average lifespan is about 9 years. But of course, that's like with humans. Humans can last 80, 70, 80 years. But if you choke them, if they cannot breathe, they will die within 10 minutes. So my question is, I was trying to find the answer, and I found one example that I would like to ask your opinion about, and that was the case of hypoglycemia, when the situation is that the glucose in the body of probably diabetes person, it drops down dramatically, so they have no glucose. In order to change into or start eating the ketones in the fat, it takes several days. And I've been taught this in elementary school that when this happens and the person is almost collapsing, that I should give them sugar. And I asked a friend of mine, he's a doctor, and he told me that if they don't get the sugar within 10, 15 minutes, that already there could be a brain damage or something done like that. So this brings me to a question to you. Do you think that it's possible that a human cell, when deprived of glucose and ketones, can, for example, survive only 20, 30 minutes?
You need something to sustain survival, right? So it's all about the context. If you take a cell and just put it in the lab and remove everything, they probably will die in a few hours, maybe just a day. You put them into a mouse or a human, then it changes, because now you're thinking of the stockpile, right? So how much stored sugar do they have? It's like now, how many days can you survive without toilet paper? It depends. If you didn't save anything, maybe 1 week, but that guy over there saved a lot, so he's going to last several months, doesn't have to do to the groceries. So same thing, someone who's been eating a lot of carbohydrates for years and has a lot of glycogen in his liver, it's going to take him a while to use all that up, versus someone who doesn't have as much. And as far as the sugar being low, yes, if it's low and you don't have a substitute form of energy, you're going to have trouble. You're going to go into hypoglycemic shock. But if you have ketones, then you won't, and you'll actually feel fine. They know that for a fact, because when you have ketosis, you have a good amount of ketones in your blood. Even a low blood sugar level of maybe like 1 millimolar or 60 milligram or less milligram per deciliter would be pretty much life-threatening, right? But if you have ketones at that moment, then you have that form of energy. You won't have any symptoms. They're actually fine, because that's what keeps the brain going. So it's all about whether you have ketones to replace the glucose. Okay,
well, the reason I was asking is that if for example, for 20, 30 days, I can only drink water, and I'm in the full ketosis. If it can have a great impact on the cancer cell, and the reason I'm asking is that if, for example, you say, if the cancer cell can hold its breath for 6 months, then if for 30 days I only drink water, it will probably have no effect. But if it can hold its breath for let's say 2 days, for example, then if I can do the water fast for 30 days, then it could have a great effect. So my question is do you think that 10 days, 20 days being in ketosis could have a great effect on the cancer cell, because the cancer cell would not have enough energy to use, and
So theoretically, that's a good point, but we don't have any data to prove it. We did a study where they fasted for 3 days.
3 days?
72 hours. Right? And the patients either just fasted or got chemo, but the conclusion was fasting alone for 3 days is not as good as fasting with chemotherapy. In short, there was no effect. So would fasting longer than that work? Possibly, but we don't have that data in cancer patients. It's very hard to recruit anyone, for that matter, for a fasting trial. But the actually even that trial, they exclude, most of the trials would exclude people who are thin with a low body mass index, people who've already lost weight. So they, in general, would get relatively healthy people. So yes, theoretically you are right. Maybe you can, but short-term fasting does not seem to have any impact yet.
But I agree.
As scientists, we always want to look at data, so it's track record.
Yeah.
So you always want something to prove it. But yes, theoretically you can, but maybe it's better you approach cancer with a combination approach. It's always better to add standard therapy plus alternative therapy.
Well, I find interesting. Well, when you and I speak, and I mentioned this, if the water fast can help, you always mention that someone who's already in like they're diagnosed that it's already full blown cancer. But so my another question is, what do you think about, let's say that 3-week water fast would be done, let's say once a year. And if I do it once a year, the idea is that if there's any cell that only is, starts to, quote unquote, if it thinks about switching into cancer mode or just switch, if I as a prevention once a year, or now I don't know, if it's 6 months or once every 5 years, I don't know. But do you think that periodically, it's like, if you have a garden and there's just like a little bit of weed and you just put something there that eats the weed, like, what do you think about this?
We actually have human data on that, right? The Mormons in Utah do that. So they fast 24 hours once a month. The first Sunday of every month they fast, no food, not sure about water. So if you translate that to weeks, that's roughly like 50 days, 6 weeks. No, actually every month. So 2 weeks of fasting. And they have very low cancer incidence.
But isn't it that if they only do it for, let's say 1 day, that they haven't entered the ketosis mode? Then, because what I'm trying to say is that if I know that cancer cells are not really good with eating glucose, and I know that if I stop eating right now, for the next 2-3 days, the body, gets the glucose from the food in the intestines. Then later it gets it from the glycogen in liver. Then it turns to the muscle, and only after 5-6 days it enters ketogenesis. So if I only do 1 day water fast, the glucose levels will still stay the same.
Gotcha. I see. Okay. Well, there's a little bit of a debate about that because when we did our trial for the advanced cancer patients and put them on a ketogenic diet, we thought also that it might take a week or more. We had patients go into ketosis as early as 2 days.
Wow.
Like their levels were really high. And I know Dr. Walter Longo did some studies on this, and he found that even after you stop fasting, and you're no longer fasting, the metabolism is still the same as when you're fasting for a few more days after that.
Wow.
So it does not stop there. It's not like when you stop, everything's gone.
Yeah.
It still keeps going for a while. So I think even 1 day, and especially a 24-hour fast, that's pretty intense, and I know it from my personal experience. I just, if I do no food for a day, the ketones do go up.
Wow.
They really do. But everyone's a little different. So as I said, it also depends on the stockpile that you have, right? So some patients might take a long time to go into ketosis. Some people go into it right away. But of course, the longer you do it, the better.
Okay.
In terms of ketosis. If you have cancer and you're a little on the malnourished side, maybe you need to have medical supervision, because some patients who do fast about 7 days, around the range of 7 days, they could get into trouble, the patients, and usually these are the patients with heart disease, underlying lung disease, diabetes. So these are the groups of patients where you have to be more careful.
Okay.
And the trials usually exclude them. They're not in those trials. So we don't know beyond the trials, right? As scientists, we always want some kind of evidence, or at least track record going back.
Now, okay, so perfect. Now, another question that I have is, because when I was checking the internet and the benefits of keto diet, I also found out that it helps to with the Alzheimer, because the ketone molecule is supposed to be smaller than the glucose molecule, and then when the body is full of ketones, it can actually provide more blood and everything into the brain. And from what I read, apparently in later stages, when you have Alzheimer, it actually happens to the cells in the brain that during the life didn't get as much blood as the other cells. So what do you think about when someone says that the keto diet can help with Alzheimer? Is it possible?
Well, I'm not a neurologist, but I would think that ketones do furnish energy to the brain. In fact, the brain takes that very easily. There's a stabilizing effect on neurons, neuron excitability, which is why the keto diet's actually a treatment. It's an established treatment for seizures. So now they're exploring that angle in dementia and possibly autism spectrum disorders and even depression. They find that people who have depressed moods develop some kind of euphoria after becoming ketotic. There was actually a case report in New York back in the 1920s where 2 women with cancer were confined in a psychiatric hospital, and back then the treatment was electric shock treatment. But because they had cancer, they were afraid to give them shock treatment, so instead they gave them medical shock, which is insulin. So they would bring down their sugar till it was really, really low, like near coma levels. But patients did fine, actually. Not only did they survive the hypoglycemic coma, they became ketotic. Their depression disappeared, and their cancers too. Their cancers actually disappeared, and there was no more follow-up after that. Well, one of the patients did come back once and reported no evidence of disease. So that is that's one interesting case report. And years passed, nothing else was published that I know of, except now I know that people are beginning to study the keto diet in psychiatric disorders and neurologic disorders.
But from what you're saying, it almost sounds like the ketone is this godlike, perfect fuel for the body that just does magic. Why is that?
Yes.
How is this possible? Like, does it mean that evolutionary we were made for ketones, and then later on, when we introduce sugar and glucose, into our diet, we sort of it's great that we have this fast energy, but evolutionary we are made for ketones? Is it possible?
Well, that's the way it was in the beginning, right? When we were cave people, you don't have food every day.
Yeah.
You hunt, you get your food, you eat it, and then you wait till the next buffalo comes along. So in that time you fast. That's normal, right? That's how it was. So you have a couple of days where you're just drinking water or berries and there's no food. And then when civilization came, now there's food everywhere, right?
Yeah,
now,
I agree. Yeah.
So back then it was natural. Everybody fasted.
Yeah.
But now you eat not only every day, you eat 3 times a day plus snacks. So it has changed.
And supper.
And so we got to go back to several hundred years, millions of years ago.
So before I ask the last question, I have one more, and that is, and I'm glad you just mentioned what you mentioned. I noticed on my Facebook profile that there's and maybe it's because I live in the Czech Republic, but there's a huge number of people who attack me for doing a water fast, who tell me that it's the stupidest idea, that the human body is not made for starving, that the human body needs to eat, every 6 hours, and they think that I'm absolutely crazy. So since I feel that in this area you know what you are talking about, could you tell me, is water fasting bad for me, or are they just uninformed?
Well, it depends on the person, right? If you're a healthy person, you probably can do water fasting. We do it all the time in patients who are sick, right? Mm-hmm. You come in for surgery, there's no food for a whole day. There's no food overnight, and then after the surgery, there's no food. We have patients on ventilators. They don't eat food for weeks until they get off the ventilator. Mm-hmm. As long as you give them fluids and watch their electrolytes, they should be fine, and it will take some time before they will actually need to eat. In fact, I think it's a natural mechanism that your body protects itself. Mm-hmm. So cancer is something that's new, relatively. I don't think there was as much cancer before, and I can tell by the size of our textbooks, they get thicker and thicker every year. Wow. So for a healthy person, I think, it's probably safe. In patients who have more medical conditions, probably still safe, but you have to balance the risks of malnutrition, which some people can do, if they don't add the nutrition aspect. So you have to remember, when you fast, it's not just one phase. There is a second phase. You have to feed also, right? Yeah. So you also have to pay attention to that time when you stop fasting. What are you going to eat? You can't eat junk also when you eat, because already you're fasting, you bring down your insulin, you bring your insulin growth factor, fix everything, and then you're going to eat something unhealthy. You're going to eat a donut, so it does nothing. It will not increase your muscle mass. So really, when you start eating, you have to think, what should I eat at this point? And at that point, I'll probably choose protein, right? Mm-hmm. Because now your body's starving. The cancers are starving even more. So you're going to choose a food that will make your normal cells, which are also hungry, increase, so your normal cells will now replace itself with new, clean, young cells, increase your muscle mass. It's actually a strategy that bodybuilders are doing every day. They exercise and go into autophagy, and they feel good, and then they eat after not eating. And then, so the net effect is they have more muscle, which is probably a good strategy for cancer patients. So that is one downside of going through fasting, because you're not eating, but there's always, at the end of it, you're going to eat. Mm-hmm. So that will make up for it. And which is probably one disadvantage of the keto diet, if you don't ever put anything good, So you also have to look at the quality of the keto diet. Mm-hmm. Just because it's keto doesn't mean you just eat fat. You can fine tune it. You can choose your fat, make sure it's healthy fats, anti-inflammatory fats, and look at the protein you're eating. Make sure it's good protein. Don't go overboard. If you eat too much protein, the excess protein goes back into gluconeogenesis. In other words, excess protein becomes sugar. Mm-hmm. So it's still moderation and tailoring, right? So you can't just say, I'm going to do this. You go around, and same with the chemo. You don't just give chemo. You tone it down if it's too toxic. Yeah. So there's a balance.
Okay. So now I have the last question, Jocelyn. Again, thank you for your time. Thank you for, this crazy idea that I had with regards to, just drinking water and killing cancer and, making sure that I don't have Alzheimer and everything, that, that we could discuss it. And my last question is, so where do we go from here? Because, I want to now, publish our interview. I want to basically, tell the world, look, there is a possibility that if you drink water only for, a week, 2, 3, whatever, that this could actually significantly help you. So what's the proper way, like aside from telling the world, hey, there is a chance, take a look at it. Is there anything that I can do to somehow, like more officially to get it out there? Or is there just, like just you just do videos and post on the internet until someone notices it? Or like what would you recommend?
I think public awareness, especially in the medical community, is key. People should know that there are doctors in the United States who are studying this right now. Specifically, the keto diet is now gaining steam. There's a lot of people studying it in cancer, in multiple metabolic disorders, fasting as well. So ideally, you should be part of a clinical trial, right? If you are unable to join a clinical trial because of where you live and things like that, you can. But if you think it's something that can benefit you, then I would probably get yourself more informed, read more about this, get your doctors informed, and that way they can weigh in on this and decide if it's something that you don't have time to wait for the results of these trials, but there's a lot of promising data. I would like to try this. Would you be willing to? And I'm referring to the long-term fasting.
Yeah.
As far as short-term fasting, we already have data from the people in Utah. They 1 day a week, not bad. I would think probably even a week might be still okay based on just my experience as a doctor. We fast people all the time in the ICU as long as you maintain energy, electrolyte balance, and you supervise it medically. Good lifestyle, choice of food. As far as cancer, it's a whole approach. There's no one single treatment. I think your success is better if you add everything up. You involve your doctors, try to take advantage of the established treatment, but because we know that's not a cure. Most treatments now that we have are not a cure. They just buy time.
Yeah.
Get yourself involved. Patient has to be involved also, not just the doctor. Start eating healthy, maybe incorporate some fasting. If you cannot follow a keto diet, maybe fasting would be similar. You get the same benefit. Exercise more to trigger autophagy. Sleep more. And it's a lifestyle change.
Yeah.
In general, before I started doing this, before I started advising my patients, most patients would live about a year, at the most 2. But I started advising patients way the last 5 years, and I realized I have no patients who are actually a lot of years and more. Some of them not, but they are functional. So even with my practice, I could see it happening, and I know the other doctors taking attention because there are trials now. There's trials of ketogenic diet cancer. There's even more logic disorders, and another field now is keto fasting in psychiatry and cardiology. So I think it's probably going to become more recognized. Probably right that in it's not going to be a standard treat. I would say still most doctors are hesitant, but I think education is key.
Yeah.
So just read more about it.
So I guess let's wrap up. So thank you again for taking your time and doing this interview with me, because it really helped me. What I'll do is that as I said, I will publish the whole interview uncut. I will send it to you to make sure that you're okay with it. Then I'll probably do another video in the Czech language where I'll refer to the interview. I'll try to publish it, do some hype about it, and then based on the response I get, I'll let you know how it went and if anything interesting came out of it. Yeah?
Oh yeah, that's pretty cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so
I have a question for
yeah,
you.
yes, please.
We're trying to decide here how to say your name. So my son said DVOրջák.
That's correct.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's DVOŘák.
DVOրջák.
DVOŘák.
So he's right.
Yeah.
He's a musician, so that's why.
Yeah, I think the Czech language is in the Guinness World of Records that we have this vowel, the R with a little hook on top, and it's pronounced ř. So it's DVOŘák. So yeah. But it's like the Dvorak keyboard. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's like a different way of the keyboard being set up, and it's called because you have the ASDF, the QWER, and the Dvorak keyboard is a different setup. So this is also the same last name as mine. Yeah. So it's DVOržák. That's correct. Yeah.
DVOržák.
Yes.
Okay, good.
And
well, I'm glad.
And Jocelyn, please also send me the links. Yeah. Anything that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Anything that you find that you would like to include it, just send it to me in the email. Yeah.
Yeah, you mean links to my page and stuff that do you want links to fasting or? Well, or actually the studies might be good. The studies for cancer and fasting.
Well, I would actually like two sources. One, something that refers to yourself. Right? Mm-hmm. And then the second one would be anything that you find interesting that would be, for anyone who's watching this interview, they would like to read something or follow up, then I would say that would be the second source of information. Yeah?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. There is a diet now they are selling. I didn't want to add it, but I wasn't sure. It's commercially available. I have nothing to do with it, but it's a diet that if you eat it, it's the same as fasting. You heard about that?
No. I only heard about some ketone capsules that exist that you can eat.
No, that's also a different one. So you can actually take ketone supplements and be ketotic, but it only lasts for a day. Mm-hmm. But it's expensive. So this is for people who don't want to diet, right?
Yeah.
You just have to buy the ketone, but they're missing out on the other benefits, because you also need autophagy and all that, right? You cannot get it from a pill. Mm-hmm. It only gives half the benefits, but you can be ketotic. You can just buy the pill. But there's a diet, so it's mostly fat, very little protein, very little carbs. Mm-hmm. No, it's like Jenny Craig. So these are for the patients with low willpower, lots of money.
Oh, so is it like you eat butter, something like that?
No, it looks like food. It's soup. It's soup. They have crackers, but it's made of flaxseed. Wow. And it's all fat.
Wow.
So they get it. It's very nice. It's packaged. It's expensive. It's like $300 for. So they take it.
So $300 for a meal? No, for how?
It's a meal. It's good for 5 days.
Yeah, but but the $300, that's for the 5 days?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Wow.
200 something, I think. Yeah, when I first saw it, I said, "Oh, that's rubbish." But later on, I listened to those conferences. It actually makes sense. These are for the people who no willpower, but they say, "Just give me the food, I'll eat it."
Wow.
So it's the same thing.
That was the second reason why I did the water fast. That I was asking myself, am I a chimpanzee or am I an intelligent Homo sapiens? So.
Yeah. But one thing I have a personal experience with this because I have a thyroid issue, so it goes up and down. And then when I fasted, intermittent fasting, like really strict, for 4 weeks, check my numbers. It's changed completely. Wow. It has an effect on autoimmunity,
Wow.
It's almost normal now.
Wow.
So even my doctor said, something wrong here, something completely wrong. I said, I think it's from the fasting.
Wow.
It's really profound. So it's amazing how this can make people healthy.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So prolonged fasting could work, really. There's actually a video, but I'm not sure if it's legitimate, where they check in people to the hospital and give them the prolonged fasting regimen. Have you watched that one?
No,
The Science of Fasting?
I don't think I've seen it. I've seen
I put it on my
so
Facebook
many
group.
that I'm not sure if I saw that one.
Yeah, it's 45 minutes long. So people with metabolic problems, they check in and then they find that it reversed their diabetes. Of course, that's easy. We know, but other things, they have other medical problems, so they feel better. Their depression disappears. I think that's true. The depression part, it could really help a lot of disease.
Yeah. But when you talk about the depression, I know that when I was doing the second water fast, after the 9 days, I felt amazing. I mean, I felt like, I don't know, I felt like I was more intelligent, more conscious. I could understand things, I was in a better mood. It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Well,
so we'll see.
Yeah. So let's stay in touch. I'll let you know how it goes. I will also send you the video once I upload it for you to check and make sure that you're okay with it. And let's stay in touch and see where it goes. Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So.
Hope it works.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Oh, thank you. My pleasure. Okay. Bye bye.
Bye.